I don't even have an opening bit. Let's just get to the games. Hello everyone, my name is Sammy Fleur, and welcome back to Bolt Action, the series that I'm sure my neighbors are going to hate me for soon enough because I yell a lot during these videos, and my walls are pretty thin, and I'm currently recording this video at 11:47 p.m. And seeing as it is so late, I will go ahead and make a concession to my neighbors in the form of expressing how I felt about the 3 games this week into this piece of semi-soundproof paneling that I, for some reason, have yet to put onto my wall.
What the hell did I just watch?
They didn't hear that, right? Cool. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the games that the Lightning did play this week. They started on Saturday night with a 4-3 overtime loss to the Toronto Maple Leafs, a game that I feel like a lot of us think they should not have lost at all, but don't worry, we're going to get there. And then between Tuesday and Thursday, they casually followed that up with back-to-back shutouts against the Carolina Hurricanes 3-0 and the San Jose Sharks 6-0. Oh, maybe you could tell I'm a little bit excited about that. Let's start with the Toronto game, the 4-3 loss in overtime. And let me just express to you that it was the worst kind of deja vu watching this game. It was a 4-3 loss in overtime at home, which is exactly what happened in Game 3 of the first round playoffs from this past year, but it doesn't stop there. It was an overtime loss, which the Lightning lost all 3 of in that same series. It was a game in which Matthew Nye scored his first point of the season, and not stopping there, he ended up scoring 3. And may I remind you that Matthew Nye scored his first ever NHL point against the Lightning in Tampa Bay in a 4-3 win for the Maple Leafs. And to cap off the coup de grace of awfulness that was this game, the overtime winner was scored by John Tavares. The same John Tavares that beat the Lightning in overtime in Game 6 in Tampa to help Toronto win their first playoff series since 2004. So perhaps you could see why I was just a little bit worked up about this game. In fact, I want to show you something, all right? I streamed myself watching this game over on Twitch. I obviously couldn't show the game for reasons of, you know, legality, but I want you to try to pick out the difference in my reaction between the first clip, when the Lightning just went up 3-1 and chased Ilya Samsonov out of the goal after only putting 4 shots on goal, and he only stopped 1 of them, versus at the end of the game when John Tavares netted the overtime winner. Future Sammy, please splice that in here. Take it away. I got football here. I got hockey there. Lightning score again! Up 3-1 on the Leafs in a period where they're getting outshot 10-4. Off the draw. Who is that? Sergachev, Kucherov. Oh! Kucherov, you dirty man! They're chasing the goalie already! Ilya Samsonov has been chased from the goal. Not even 14 minutes. 13 minutes, 29 seconds. He is out of the game. Joseph Woll is in. Toronto is waving the white flag. Let's go, boys. 3 goals on 4 shots.
6 hours later.
John Tavares, Eva, scores the overtime winner. Toronto wins 4-3. Gosh sakes. Lightning controlled that game. It's just like I said. It's just like I said. In the video that I'm going to release tomorrow, the Lightning controlled that game for 40 minutes. You can't expect to win when you only play 40 minutes out of 60 minutes. It's a 60-minute game. Play the whole 60 minutes, then you can win. See, I told you, I was just a little upset, just a little bit. The loss to the Maple Leafs was essentially the culmination of everything that we had seen and known to be true about the Lightning through the first 5 games of the season. Some of it was the good, and a lot of it was the bad. The good of which being the stellar offensive output for the night, creating tons of chances, getting enough shots on goal, the high efficiency of the power play going 2 for 4 on the night. These are all the things that we have come to expect from the Tampa Bay Lightning offense. And all of that is good, except the bad reminds us that the Lightning can't outscore their problems and their mistakes every single night. Their defense is problematic, or at least it was in this game. They were turning the puck over, they were taking some stupid penalties, they were losing their defensive responsibility, and overall just kind of leaving Jonas Johansson out to dry and saying, hey, Toronto, how many shots do you want to take on our goalie tonight? How many shots? 52? Yeah, that sounds reasonable. I remarked in the last video that it was absolutely abysmal that the Lightning were giving up 42 shots to the Detroit Red Wings, but not to be outdone, they gave up 52 to the Toronto Maple Leafs. And it is a testament to Jonas Johansson that he is finding himself and he's finding his place on this team, that despite the fact that he faced 52 shots from one of the most high-powered offenses in the league, he still stopped 48 of them. He gave himself a 923 save percentage on the night. I don't care what goalie you are. If you are facing 52 shots on any given night and you only give up 4 goals, I'm calling that a win. But the worst part, the most tragic thing about this loss that I unfortunately kind of anticipated and I called out in my last video, the Lightning didn't play 60 minutes during this game. That first period was by no means their best period of the season, despite the fact that they scored 3 goals. It wasn't even their best period of the game, in my opinion. William Nylander puts the Maple Leafs up about 4 minutes into the period, and then the Lightning just stomp on the gas, as they should have. As I mentioned earlier, they scored 3 goals on 4 shots and chased Ilya Samsonov out of the game. Like, conversely to Jonas Johansson stopping 48 of 52. If you only stop 1 out of 4, that's a very bad night. And they scored those 3 goals, by the way, while getting outshot 17-8. Thus, again, highlighting not their strongest period, but hey, you end a period up 3-1. Nobody's going to complain. The second period, hands down, their best period of that game. No penalties taken, limiting chances, outshooting the Maple Leafs 12-10. Even though the stat sheet makes it seem like it was a lot closer than it actually was, it felt like Tampa was in control all 20 of those minutes. And true to form over the first 5 games of the season, the Lightning, in no particular order, will play one kind of okay period, they'll play a really, really good period, and then they will nosedive. And unfortunately, that nosedive came in the third period this time, and extended into overtime. All credit to Matthew Knies. Congratulations on getting back-to-back goals in this game. The first 2 goals of the season for you, but Lightning, are we serious? You're gonna let Max Domi kind of skate around the defense, find a beautiful passing lane to a wide open Matthew Knies, not once, but twice? Those 2 are on their 3rd line, and based on how they were skating and passing and shooting and ultimately scoring, they looked better than Matthews, Marner, and Yarncroke on the top line the whole night. And the Lightning couldn't do enough to fight back in the third period. They got outshot 20-11 and got outshot 5-0 in overtime. They barely had any possession of the puck during overtime before John Tavares, again, kind of gave us this deja vu and And as upset as I was about that game in the moment, and still a little bit upset in this moment right now, I'm thankful for 2 things. Number 1, they at least lost in overtime, so they got a point in the standings. And number 2, with the benefit of hindsight, with the Carolina game and the San Jose game now in our rearview mirror, I feel like that loss to the Leafs had to happen. I'm not talking about a philosophical concept of fate or anything like that. I mean, it had to happen because the Lightning had to experience that deja vu again. They had to be upset about it again. They had to be angry about it again. They had to face the taunts of the Toronto fan base, especially towards Mikhail Sergachev. He was the butt of a lot of jokes. They had to face the media criticism, both from Toronto and from Tampa Bay. They had to let all of these things sink in, and they just had to sit with it for a few days. And the result of that, I think, is, especially as you look over the following 2 games against Carolina and San Jose, the Lightning did sit with it. They let it affect them. They let it make them angry. So if I am in that position, I am taking the mindset of, just like if I were to attempt to put some paper mache wings on a freshly produced dog turd with the intent of throwing it across the yard, that isn't going to fly. And I think the Tampa Bay Lightning team would agree with me because they proceeded to rattle off their 2 best, most dominant victories of this very young season. That game against Carolina, I'm going into it knowing they're going to be a difficult customer. I think when I last checked, they had put the most shots on goal in the entire league through the first 6 or 7 games, so you know they're going to come out firing. And even though they did end up getting outshot by Carolina 32-23, what they did so much better than they had at any of the previous 6 games leading up to this is they limited the number of second chances that they gave the Hurricanes. Some of that credit goes to Jonas Johansson for some phenomenal rebound control, redirecting pucks into the boards when need be, and closing up and covering when need be. And some of that credit goes to the Lightning blue line, who were very defensively aware in this game. They knew where the puck was, they knew exactly where they needed to clear it out, and I think most importantly, they were limiting Carolina's chances, their high danger chances, from the middle of the ice. Yes, Carolina still got plenty of shots on goal from the sides, but those are far easier to deal with versus when you have someone just streaking down the middle of the ice and they have a lot of net to pick from. And it all served to highlight what I knew the potential was when I did my season preview. If this Lightning team plays lockdown defense, meaning they just take care of Jonas Johansson. They just take care of him and make sure that chances are limited, that second chances are extremely limited. They're going to put themselves in the best position to win every single game. And they finally got it through their head. It was so incredibly refreshing to see because I felt like I was just yelling into the void, hoping that they would actually notice the same things I was noticing and they would do something about it. Now, what I will say is this is probably not the strongest version of the Carolina Hurricanes that we're going to see this season. Let's keep in mind that they opened the season at home with a win over the Ottawa Senators. They then proceeded to go on a 6-game road trip, most of which was on the West Coast, that ended in Tampa Bay on Tuesday night. Not only that, but their starting goalie in Frederik Andersen has been day-to-day for the last few games, meaning that the onus fell on backup Pyotr Kochetkov to essentially fill in the same capacity that Jonas Johansson is, and he's just got to make the best out of the situation that he's given. Pyotr Kochetkov, all credit where credit's due. I think he's got a bright future ahead of him. He just turned 24 this summer. He's been with the Hurricanes for 3 seasons, and last season he was kind of thrust into the spotlight. He had to start 24 games. He came away with a .909 save percentage and a .244 goals against average. For a young goalie, that's pretty stellar. And for a young, inexperienced goalie like that, you need to play, well, kind of like the Lightning played in front of Jonas Johansson tonight. You need to limit chances. You need to be responsible. You need to take care of your goalie. And this was a night where, unfortunately, even though Carolina has been very good at taking care of their goalie in the past few seasons, they just didn't tonight. And if you are the Tampa Bay Lightning, you need to seize on those opportunities when you get them because they don't come very often against a team like Carolina. And once again, credit where credit's due. The Lightning did what they were supposed to do in this game, and to continue to add to the motivation as if the Lightning needed any more, to continue fanning the flame underneath their own feet as if they needed it anymore. There was a pretty big scrum after the Lightning scored their 3rd goal late in the 3rd period. The Lightning are celebrating their 3rd goal of the evening and their pending victory. Dmitry Orlov takes a run at Steven Stamkos. Brawl ensues. 26 penalty minutes are handed out, including 2 ejections to Dmitry Orlov and Brendan Lemieux. Admittedly, Brendan Lemieux got ejected for running his mouth to the officials, but that's not the point of all of this. The point of all of it is when the other team takes a run at any of your players, but especially your captain, you stick up for him. You get in the middle of that brawl, you throw whatever punches you have to, you take guys down to the ice, you do whatever you have to do, and it is a galvanizing experience for the entire team. And all of that boiled over 1 minute later, where Brady Shea puts a knee to Nikita Kucherov, trips him up, sends him falling face forward into the ice, and of all people, Nick Paul decides to square up with Jack Drury over this. So yes, winning the game by 3 goals, that's fantastic. Jonas Johansson getting a shutout, that's fantastic too. I think the biggest takeaway from this game is if you are going to face the Lightning when they have this fire in their eyes, this passion, this determination to do whatever it takes to win the game and stick up for their own, oh, get out of the way. And I think that's the standard operating procedure that the Lightning have been comfortable with for most of the last 4 to 5 seasons, and it was on display again in the 6-0 rout of the San Jose Sharks. I will be honest with you, it would be very difficult for me to try and sit here and paint this rout of the San Jose Sharks as some grand achievement on the season, as this goal that they have been working towards, when in reality, they beat up a bad team. The Sharks are rebuilding for a reason, right? I know it, you know it, they know it. They sold off some of their key pieces. Timo Meier's no longer there. Erik Karlsson is no longer there. They are in full rebuild mode, and it's gonna go through some growing pains for a while. So even though there are some great things that I want to point out about that game, even though there are some great things that I want to call out as progress as they're staring down next week's schedule and beginning a 4-game road trip, there's really no reason that they shouldn't have won that game against San Jose. Particularly, I want to call out that I think the tinkering that John Cooper is doing with the lines is in a pretty good spot right now. I knew that with 4 new faces in the forward group in particular and 1 brand new face in the defensive core, it was going to take some time to kind of figure out where everybody was most comfortable, where they would develop the most chemistry, and just generally what was going to work. Yes, I love the line of Steven Stamkos, Braden Point, Nikita Kucherov, and as potent as that line is, it did leave a little bit of just something lacking from lines 2 through 4 past that. Cooper moves Alexander Barre-Boulet all the way up to the top line to play with Braden Point and Nikita Kucherov. Great position for such a young player to learn, especially with two dynamic passers and goal scorers such as those two guys. Second line of Steven Stamkos, Nick Paul, Brandon Hagel. It doesn't have the same potency that a Stamkos Point Kucherov line does, but that's still kind of its own mini power play in and of itself. But I think what I like most of all so far is what Cooper is doing to the third and the fourth lines in helping them develop their own identity. Third line of Tanner Jeannot, Anthony Cirelli, Valtteri Merila. Fourth line, Connor Sheary, Luke Glendening, Michael Eyssimont. None of these guys were really playing with each other that much through the first 5 games, but the chemistry does seem to be better at this point. The fourth line alone was responsible for producing 2 goals in this game. One from Michael Eyssimont, one from Luke Glendening, and that is actually more than they had produced in the previous 6 games combined. And on the defensive pairings, I know why you want to have Nick Perbix playing alongside Victor Hedman. With a young defenseman, you want to have that safety net, especially in the form of a guy who is constantly in conversation for the best defenseman in the league every year. But it wasn't working. Neither was Mikhail Sergachev with Darren Radish. Neither was Calvin DeHaan with Eric Chernak. So it's time to throw him in a blender and see what happens. And it seems that at least through the first couple of games of trying out this experiment, these new pairings of Hedman Chernak, of Sergachev Perbix, and of DeHaan and Radish, it seems to be working out for right now, so let's not mess with a good thing. I don't particularly know why any of them are developing chemistry with one another. At the end of the day, I don't actually care why. I want to know that it works. I want it to produce results. I want them to stay diligent and dedicated in front of Jonas Johansson so that when Vasilevsky does come back, he's not having to be Superman every single game. I also want to point out that Nikita Kucherov is continuing his hot start. He is currently 5th in the league in scoring at 11 points, behind Jack Hughes at 17, Dylan Larkin at 15, Alex DeBrincat at 13, and Mikko Rantanen at 12. Gotta make sure I call out Braden Point. Got his first goal of the season against Carolina, got his second against San Jose. That puts him 1 point behind Nikita Kucherov at 10, 2 goals, 8 assists through the first 8 games. If both of those guys keep up a ridiculous scoring pace like this, oh boy, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with down the road. I have to also give a nod to Victor Hedman, who is currently tied for first in the league for points amongst defensemen with 9 points, 1 goal, 8 assists. He's currently tied with Cale Makar and Shane Gostisbehere. And I feel compelled to point out that the future core of this offense is cooking as well. Brandon Hagel, Nick Paul, both have 5 goals through their first 8 games. They have 8 points and 7 points respectively. I think those contracts are looking pretty good right about now. And of course, we can't possibly end this video without shouting out goaltender Jonas Johansson, posting back-to-back shutout wins, stopping 23 shots against San Jose, 32 against Carolina, stopping 55 in those back-to-back wins. And if you include the Toronto game in that, then in his 3 games this week, he stopped 103 out of 107 shots. I don't care who you are, for a 3-game stretch, that's pretty good. Overall, that raised his save percentage on the season to a .925, and it dropped his goals against average to a .256. Again, if he continues to put on that kind of effort and the Lightning defense stands stout in front of him, I don't think they're going to have any problem weathering the storm until Vasilevsky comes back. With all that in mind, let's look at the road ahead. The Lightning only have 2 games that I will be covering in the next video. The first is at home against Seattle on Monday, October 30th, and the second starts a 4-game road trip in Columbus on Thursday, November 2nd. As I've been saying, my weeks for these games are Saturday to Friday. So that Saturday night game in Ottawa will be pushed into the next week's video. A video that will include a rematch against Toronto. Can't wait for that. Oh, and it'll be the first time the Lightning get to see Connor Bedard. That is going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for giving me just a little bit of your time. It really does mean the world to me that you would take some time to watch these silly little hockey videos that I put out there for the enjoyment of strangers. But until I see you again, remember, go Bolts, and can we make it 3 shutouts in a row? Fingers crossed.